This is the beginning of Lecture 018, Receiving Jesus Christ, given by Father Paul, April 9th, 1970, 83 minutes in length. The final 10 minutes of this lecture can be found on disc 16.
Tonight, and this first day of the fast before Easter, some statements and things accepted by the ancients in their understanding of the Master Jesus and the kingdom of God. It is said by one ancient teacher that unless you seek the kingdom of God first above all, nothing else of the divine order will be granted unto you in its fullness, so that you may retain it after you pass through transition. But what constitutes the kingdom of God? It is the complete occupancy of our heart by Jesus Christ, who shall reign within it, his temple, with wisdom and love, and who shall illumine our minds by his Spirit within, so that we shall be able to penetrate the exterior cloak of nature and its illusion. When we shall have come into the possession of the universal spirit of understanding, that is the Spirit of Christ within us. Perhaps then we shall become acquainted through his grace with the exterior universal spirit of nature in a more perfect manner. Then it will be possible for us to use the ordinary philosophy to understand man. As long as man has not acquired the art of the interior analysis and stubbornly sticks with his own will or an idea that he has one, and that it will enable him to distinguish the sacred from the profane, he besmirks the purity of his own inner chamber, and he becomes impure. Until the time has arrived, man will not succeed in being able to distinguish blessings from curses in the exterior world. This is from a very reliable source and very old. There is one of the most important things that we reach in these understandings of God and the Master is the feeling that through some unknown and some very erroneous idea we reach some sort of cosmic tie-up, but that there is no distinct and definite functional approach. There is always in man the desire for him to pilot his own ship and his own idea, for he wants to do it, regardless of the supreme and perfect results. He still wants to do it. A truth may be a new one to us only because we have never known it, yet it may actually be age old. In fact, it may be one of the first truths that man ever discovered of God. But it is not necessary to abandon the ancient methods and these things which are described by times immemorial. The truths in order, that we may choose in order, that we may present them in a more modern form of expression and application. For times may change, And man may desire new things, but he may not change. He may not move the inevitable law regardless of his desire. We include certain segments of them in their original form in their various levels of present-day work, all through the first 4 elements of creation. There are the ideas the same today as 10,000 years ago. Therefore, both Jew and Gentile alike can accept the idea of Jesus, the ideal of Jesus, the Christ, which this mystic presents, or that mystic or that teacher presents. Whenever he refers to the Christ, Jesus, within us, he is referring primarily to the Christ consciousness and not to the biblical master of old, because it is his mantle under which we work, as reduced to the human expression in so many of the interpretations and preachments based on Christian doctrines. To this man, be he Jew or Gentile, Jesus, the Christ, represented the spirit of essential wisdom, the spirit of cosmic attunement, as well as the ultimate development of the human consciousness. This man would naturally pick out the ideal character and pay homage to him as a royal being. The one who quoted this and whose idea was brought forth in parchment was the son of a count of one of the royal families of England, of Europe, pardon me. I guess that England is in Europe. When royalty bends its head, it stoops a long ways, usually. If wisdom does not benefit man, if love does not make him happy, but very little has been done for him on the whole. Oh, if only natural man were interested in natural things. That is, natural man, that is the sensuous one, would only learn to see that the source of his intelligence and the incentive of his will, the will of God, are only his individuality. He would then seek interiorly for the higher source, and he would thereby approach that which alone can give him this true element, because it is wisdom in its essential substance. Wisdom in its essential substance. Not words, substance. Jesus Christ is that wisdom, truth, and love. He was master. He is Lord of this earth. He as wisdom is the principle of reason and the source of the purest intelligence that we can contact on this globe. As love, he is the principle of morality, the true and pure incentive of the will in its basic form. Love and wisdom beget the spirit of truth, interior light. This light illuminates us and makes us superior beings, the same as the animal is to the plant. So this light makes us that much superior to those who have it not. It is inconceivable in what depth of error a man falls when he abandons the simple truth of faith by opposing the opinions are the things of reality, or opposing his own opinions until he knows. Our centuries passed to decide by it intelligence, wherein lies the principle or ground of reason, and the mortality or the ground of the will. If the scientists were mindful, they would see that these things are better answers in the heart of the simplest man than through their most brilliant approaches and papers. The practical Christian finds this incentive to the will, the principle of all morality, really and objectively in his heart. And this incentive is expressed in the following formula: love God with all thy heart, and thy neighbor as thyself. Now you take that and analyze that, and you'll find all of the forces in action in it. Now these are, you see, aren't things that you haven't heard before, but they are things that have not been used in relation to the powers and forces of the universe. And you like it or not, they are going to work that way. And you are going to succumb to their use, or you are going to break. So you have two choices, one way or the other. There is no other way. The love of God and his neighbor is the motive of the Christian will. The will of God. This is the very foundation of all the Christian teachings. The light of the world. Thus we find in Jesus Christ the principle of reason and morality. Now this isn't, when we use the word morality from the ancient wisdoms, we are not talking about male, female, or anything else of that nature. We're talking about morality. Just as we talk about in the Ten Commandments when we say, thou shalt not commit adultery, I'm not talking about being with your neighbor's wife necessarily. We're talking about thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not use the power and the laws of God in a dilute form. It means just what it says and nothing else. Because when you interpret the powers and the forces of the universe and the laws of God, you are committing adultery. And nothing short of that. All that I am now saying is not hyper-physical extravagance. It is really absolute truth where it says that everyone can prove for himself by experience as soon as he receives in himself the principle of all reason and morality, Jesus Christ. Now you can talk about receiving Jesus Christ, and you can say you'll receive Jesus Christ, and you can talk about it from now until the last day that you are on this earth. And until you know it, and until you feel it, and until you're willing to give up all that you're willing, then you don't know it, and you're not giving it up at all. Because the two don't work together. Jesus Christ is the essence, the fundamental spirit, in essence, wisdom and love. These two functional things. The eyes of man, sensuous perception, only is firmly close to the fundamental basis of all that is true, and and to all that is transcendental. This interior faculty of man, this spiritual, this sensoryism for the metaphysical world, is unfortunately not known to those who recognize only the outside of it, and for it is a mystery of the kingdom of God. This is the inherent drive, this is the inherent attraction for the light. This is the thing that there is no explanation for in reality, but there is the draw to stay in the light. Of course, basic substance of your body is light anyway, but this is the inherent draw and no actual fundamental technological reason for it, except that it's there and that's what a person seeks. And no matter how long he's at it, he'll keep on seeking it. So it is the transcendental objects require sensoryism. This is said close and does close in man. In other words, when you depend on your feeling, your emotions, your desires, you shut yourself in. Hence, man judges the metaphysical world through the intellect of their senses, not through its pure form. Even as the blind image the colors and the deaf judge tones without suitable senses. These are part of the things which we must understand if we are to understand the reality of the mantle of Jesus Christ and His Lordship on this earth. But that's where it lays. The opening of the spiritual sensorism is the mystery of the new man, the mystery of regeneration, and of the vital union between God and man. It is the noblest object of religion or religious principles on the earth. That religion, those sublime goals, is none other than to unite with God in spirit and in truth. So there is a perfect union, synchronous in other words. As men had internally a spiritual organ and a sensorism to receive the truth principle, the divine wisdom, or a true motive for the will of the divine love, he also has also exteriorly a physical and material sensorism to receive the appearance of light and truth. As external nature can have no absolute truth but only phenomenally relative thereof, human reason cannot cognize truth. It must be experienced. It can be comprehended through the appearances of phenomena, through the sensory organs, which excites the lust of the eye. This is another term you want to think about, the lust of the eye. And is this as a source of action consists the corruption of the sensuous man and the degeneration of nature. If thine eye be single, said the Lord, thy body shall be full of light. This is why the opening of this sensurism to the reception of the spiritual and intellectual and the metaphysical world works by interior illumination. Interior illumination. That is why you see these people, when they receive the light, they begin to have sensory experiences on a spiritual level. These are realities, and they cannot have true sensory experiences without it. Now you'll see people, when they approach, and they will accept Jesus Christ as the Lord of earth, and they will tell you all about it. They will accept this, and they will accept something else, and they will be thoroughly convinced. They will come in and work for it. They'll give their money for it. They'll give their time for it. They'll put on a new uniform. They'll take a vow for it. But be damned if they'll give up their will to it. And that's just the truth. And I mean that literally. They're willing to be. Just that. And you can put on all kinds of uniforms, and you can go through all kinds of exercises, and you can do everything else in God's world, and you can be a real nice guy, and you can give a guy something to eat, and you can give him your money to help him when he needs it, and all the other things. But until you give up and you let go, you might as well forget it, because you're not going to have it. And because until you experience it, you don't know it. So you might as well put it in the right category to begin with. You either are going to or you're not going to, one or the other, because you can't know it until you experience it. And there's no mistaking it for anything else. You can't go into a school. Let's lay it down basically and fundamentally. You can't go into a school and accept a master teacher unless you do accept him and wholly do what he tells you to. Neither can you live on this earth and have the benefits of the master teacher of it, the Lord Jesus Christ, if you don't wholly accept him and do what he tells you to. And if I was to say the same thing as the teacher would in the house or the school, he'd say, get out. Jesus doesn't have to say get out. You get out. In suffering and everything else. Because you're cut off. You cut yourself off. You don't have to do it. You cut yourself off. Just like any person that comes in this school. One came in here the other day and told me about something, and I said, whoop, wait a minute. You're talking to me and telling me that you had this problem? I said, you ought to know why. There's only one person you'd accept. You said you accepted Jesus, but you didn't. Because you turned right around and denied that I was your teacher here. I said, where do you get off? Where do you think you're going? Till you accept Jesus, you don't accept me. And this is true. Because if they deny the priests of our Lord, they deny him. Remember that. And that's the truth. And there's no way out of it. Now we read an awful lot, and we are at the time of the season when we talk about the crucifixion. And I wanted to get this point about the Lord of earth and where he sits in relation to us, because I hear so many talking about, well, if they had an experience, well, how are they going to have an experience of something they deny exists? In the Testament it tells us about the ascension and various other things which have to do with this time of year. And we're talking about this. The most notable example of this is recorded in the Oriental writings regarding the life and works of Jesus. It is said that in these writings that Jesus often, upon occasions, made himself disappear. made himself suddenly invisible. This in itself was not stated as though it were an unusual thing or a miraculous thing, nor is it cited as an example of any great historical ability, because all through the ancient records of the works of the great masters, the same manifestation is often noted, and in a purely casual way. If one will read even the Old Testament of the Bible, one will find many citations where such is plainly indicated that a similar manifestation had occurred in the lives of a great many people whom had been illuminated or spiritually and divinely prepared. In every report that comes to us from the great white brothers or from the Tibetan leaders, from the worldly contact with the great masters of the Great Order or the masters of the Far East, we read that these masters often make similar manifestations of invisibility. Madame Blavatsky, one of the great Russian philosophers, in her writings refers to the fact that this one was one of the first inspiring manifestations she ever witnessed, and of course she never stated whether she learned the secret of it or ever performed such manifestation herself, but she was very familiar with it and gradually came to realize that it was not one of the most outstanding that these masters could manifest. Judging purely from the onlooker's point of view, it seems that the manifestation merely consists of shrouding oneself with the condition that resulted in invisibility of the physical. In other words, to the onlooker, the master merely disappeared without seeming to go up or down or sideways in any motion. But from the point of view of the person concerned in the manifestation, a great deal more takes place than mere invisibility. There, a person who is performing the manifestation knows that he is merely veiled from the one who is watching. He knows that he does not actually disappear from existence or from any material form, and that in a little while he will become visible again without any great change being apparent. However, during that period of invisibility, or while surrounded by the veil of invisibility, he is able to do many things and perform many miracles in a highly spiritual state. This is the important matter to the one who is performing the manifestation. In other words, while the veil of invisibility is surrounded the demonstrator, he has extra sensory and extraordinary powers which can be developed and can be used, and this gives him the ability which he does not have in other times. This is the phase in which he will be interested during his experiments. The statement at the time is that while I have adopted the phrase or term veil of invisibility, many of these ancient manuscripts, if not all of them, refer to this veil as the veil of obscurity, often used as abbreviation and abbreviated as such. The veil of obscurity or invisibility. This is the time or period previous and in accordance with as the progression of regeneration takes place can be obtained. Now, are we belittling the ascension of Jesus? Not at all. Not at all. All we're doing is saying that this man was not picked up and pulled up somewhere. He went because he had the ability. He had the spiritual power. He was the master and the Lord that he became. We are putting him in the place and the level of his great spiritual wisdom, and not putting some mysterious connotation to his life or act. We are giving him credit for what he was. You understand what I'm saying to you? If a man was walking down the street that had never been to church, or we'll put it, and he suddenly had the light hit him, something like Paul did at that particular one incident in life, at least. That was really no great thing, was it? He hadn't really earned it. Maybe prior to this, maybe yes. But right then, there was no physical manifestation as to his ability. I wouldn't put this guy in any particular category of great spirituality because this happened. But the Master did this. And the understanding of how it was done, because he did it in the right place. He didn't do it with 10,000 people watching him. He didn't put off any grandstand play. He was only interested in his own. Shows that he knew he had the ability. He knew that it worked. There was no question in his mind. Because if it hadn't have been, he'd have got a bunch of ignorant people around him so they could pull the wool over their eyes. But he had his own men, his own people with him, who knew and understood and had been taught. He does put him in the greatness and in the light of the greatness which he really was. And this is one of the things that has not been taught in the Christian church, is the realities of what took place. And it's these realities that are essential for us to know if we're going to really appreciate the reality of the Master. Because otherwise we have a drama of phenomena without reason. We have a drama which took place because somebody reached down and pointed the finger, which I don't believe in. I'm not saying it can't, but I don't believe in it because I know the Master did not do this. There's a lot of difference between having an appreciation of Jesus Christ and looking at him and saying, well, I guess I better behave myself because I'm here. I can't help it. Now, I better behave myself, so I'll do what he told me. There's a lot of difference between that and appreciating and knowing and understanding the one you're working with. Quite a little difference. Some real spiritual appreciation of the one you serve. You understand what I say? Any questions? You know, these things were taught long before the Master got here. And that's one of the things that I want you to understand. In other words, he did not use anything exceptionally new except what was a reality. And he used them because they were real and they were part of God's world. He didn't go out and get any special, up some special deals of his own. But he was a master, and he did become Lord of it through what he did and through the crucifixion. And he traveled that path willfully, knowingly, determinately, without hesitation. There's another little phase of this that's very interesting of our Masters, and we draw a little conclusion here from some of the things of Buddha too. Buddha was of noble birth, of course, different than the Master was. Of course, he was born of the The average tradesman here, of course, the master was, he wasn't born in any poor family. You don't get any idea about that. He didn't come out of the gutter, or his family were not poor. They were tradesmen. Tradesmen were free men. And they did all right by themselves, believe me. So let's not look at these things this way. Don't think that because he was born in a manger, that was some disgrace or something, because the old man didn't have the price for a bunk. Let's lay it right in the line where it is. None of this false stuff that's going on. Let's really get to appreciate Jesus, what he really was. This man was the son of a tradesman who was a free man. And he wasn't under the yoke of Rome, as far as being a slave is concerned. Paid his taxes, yes. Like you now. Buddha was born of noble birth and had been surrounded with luxury, ease, and everything intended to cater to the glory of the exotic things around him. He threw off all of this and abandoned his principal heritage to adopt the beggar's costume and go out to the highway with his begging bowl to preach the esoteric side of life. Perhaps he did not ignore the material world any more than did Jesus and his disciples. But his disciples pictured him as almost wholly ignoring suffering and pain, and lifting himself so far above the esoteric that he was unconscious of it. This is overdrawn, for we find Buddha's teaching much about pain and suffering of the flesh. Therefore, we must have studied the subject and not wholly ignored it. At any rate, Buddha's teachings urge us to try to attain the so-called, what he termed nirvana. This esoteric state is wrongly interpreted as being a condition of total suspension of animation and consciousness. This was not so, for nirvana was a state of reality, and the sorrow of the world was not unknown unto it. There are many things such as this. Now the Master's teaching avoided both of these potentials. He avoided dwelling on the sorrowful and pain, and he avoided dwelling on the glory entirely. It was a middle path. He did not dwell on either one of these in any great extent. It was the path of activity and doing in a center path in most every case in his teaching. In other words, this is exactly the same thing that we are doing now. We are traveling the center path and not going all the way over this way or all the way over that way, because this path gets you there if you want to get there. Any questions? Of course, Buddha did not come here to set up a religion of any kind. That was the fault of his people whom did this. He did not intend to be a Messiah by any means. He came to help those with the teachings that were already here. But then somebody, I guess, got smart and seen what they could capitalize on them, and so they made a deal. And they went ahead with it. And there are many times things that are just this same nature happen in the religious field. Because he had no intention of starting a new faith or anything of the sort. This was quite well known. Yeah. Well, of course, there's a tremendously strong holding there, and but of course now that time has gone past, he would have to stay in the the surrounding and close proximity, rather, of the earth, because there would be calling on him. Being a leader is not the easiest thing in the world, because you know darn well you're going to have to stick around and answer some of the questions, even after you leave. So don't think, anybody that don't want to stick around here for a while, why, better just get out of the business, you know, and just take care of your own little nest egg, where you won't be called on to do anything after you've left here. Because that's just what happens to you. You understand what I mean? Okay. I think the most important point that we can call your attention to is a statement of esoteric law. It is not until Jesus the Christ used the phrase that the world came to the familiarity with it, yet we find it in mystical writings antedating Christianity. And I refer to the statement, I am the way. Most clergymen give a little emphasis, yet it is most important. Perhaps this is so because the explanation would involve esoteric principles and mystical laws with which many clergymen are unfamiliar and with which they hesitate to deal. I dare say that if the esoteric principles and law back of this phrase, I am the way, were fully explained in each Christian church once a year, it would eventually lead to many changes in ritualism and preaching. To deal with it understandingly would force clergymen out of the creed-bound position into the field of universal esotericism. A student of mysticism, however, the phrase is a key of magnificent tabernacles of spiritual worship and unfoldment. And in the first place, the four words are rich in significance of and by themselves. Therefore, let us take a good look at and analyze what Jesus and the avatar who preceded him meant by this or similar phrases. Jesus certainly did not refer to the outer and worldly physical individual, nor to his personal being as by the word I. This should be considered in connection with the second word, namely, I am. Let us add an exclamation mark, making the statement a positive affirmation, and we bring out a part of the original meaning. There are two ways of reading it, with the emphasis on the I and with the emphasis on the am. And in the first, and the sentence is an affirmation of the existence of I, the ego, or the self. It is an affirmation of egotism, the individuality of distinction and being, of separateness. In that sense, it is equivalent to saying, I am, you are, all others are, we all are, in existence, or while each of you are, I also am. It establishes each one a separate and independent being. It carries the idea that each is conscious of his own existence because he is conscious that he is himself while others are not. In the other words, I know that I exist because I sense your existence. And since you are not I, and I can sense you, I must be different from you, or I must exist independently of you. Imagine two oranges to have consciousness, and one would know that it had an existence because it could see and comprehend the other, and know that the other was not itself, it would know that the orange number 2 was not itself, but independent of it, therefore knowing it was not an orange at all. That is good reality, because that's just where it's set. And that is just one of the things that separates you from the Lord and Master Jesus Christ of this planet. It is the same type of reality. Because you are conscious that you need to say, I will accept Jesus. And you think about it that you're accepting Jesus. And you know that you're going to accept Jesus, or you are accepting Jesus. Well, as long as you do, you are. That's plain and simple. Because when you have, you won't have to accept Him. You'll be there. And that's where you'll live, in that country. Yeah.
Where does the choice come in? Not the will to accept.
There is no choice, son, when it comes to universal laws of functional force.
Well,
there is a choice.
we're all accepting.
No. Some of us don't accept Him. We cut off the force.
How do we?
You can do one of two things: turn on the light or leave it dark.
Well, how can we turn it on if we can't will it?
You don't have to will it. It's already willed. Universal spirit and form has already been willed in the creation.
Well,
when God gave the word, that was the will, because of His spirit.
well, would you just happen next?
It will happen if you accept, if you will keep yourself in line, or himself or herself in line, and not get in the line. Keep in line, but don't get in the line of the working. You understand what I mean?
Not really. I don't see, if you can't, then you don't have a choice at all, like you said.
Not on that. You can pray for anything you want, and it'll come. It'll be granted. You can demand anything you want, and it'll be granted. What more do you want?
Well, then what's the problem with accepting Jesus? You just, can't you pray for that?
You gotta be there. You gotta be there.
Well, then there's a gift.
No. You gotta experience it.
Well,
You let go.
there's a gift.
You let go or it don't come through. Because as long as you're conscious of a difference between you and Him, why, you're not there.
Well,
Mm-hmm.
how would you, what if you were already there? How would you know it?
Well, you'd know it.
Well,
You'd know it.
I mean,
Because
if you didn't come in, suppose you came in that way.
if you came in that way,
Yeah. If you don't know, I think you would.
oh, you'd let you know it. Because you know there was no difference. You wouldn't be accepting it. Or she wouldn't
Well,
be
what if you
accepting
don't
it.
know either way?
Well, it's time to find out. It's time to accept it so that you know it.
Well, I don't understand. I don't know, I must be stupid.
No, I'm not talking specifically to you, Mr. Reverend Williamson. I'm not doing that. I'm talking about basic principles.
You know, I don't understand this thing, you know. I don't want to take up the time.
Everything is important.
See, what if you don't know either way? But you realize if you went on willing to do things, that you might be in the way. So how the heck do you get out of that one? That's the problem.
You don't use the will.
Well, how do you avoid using the will? What if it's a matter where you can't help doing something?
Oh, you can do things without using the will.
Well, like getting up in the morning. What if it's not a matter of whether you're willing to get up, you just can't help getting up in the morning? You try to stop yourself and it just doesn't work.
Well, why would you want to stop yourself?
Because it's nice to lie in bed.
Well, you're lying in bed.
Well, if you got, something to do.
If you got something to do, you shouldn't want to lie in bed.
Well, I know that's what you shouldn't want to. I know a lot of people who do.
That's right. That's
But
right.
I'm saying, is that the will? I don't know. I don't even know what the will is. Which am I willing to stay in bed or get up? That's what I don't know.
Well, I'd say it was a matter of whether there was something more important up when you're up than in bed.
Well, I mean, the thing is, though, the way you talk, I understand what you say, let me put it that way. How would you know whether it was you getting in the way, willing to get up, or whether it was because you were following the way? That's the thing I don't know, Father. And you say there's a pretty good danger that you might get in the way, and will it yourself, and you can't ever get there that way.
Well, let me say this. Let me get you a full explanation of
I
that.
guess you'd feel it if you were doing it.
You'll know. What's the matter with the self?
What does the fellow do?
What's the matter with the self? Where's that?
Was it?
Yeah.
I don't know anything that's wrong with it.
Well, then you should be able to use this answer.
Well, I am.
You mean by getting up in the morning or by staying in bed?
I don't get a clear answer on that. Probably a mixture of both of them, I suppose, maybe, but I don't get a clear answer on it.
Okay. Go ahead.
On this question of the will, the exercise of will implies an exertion of the person's in this case. If you were going to get up in the morning, then you would be exercising your will, whereas if you didn't get up, you would just be relaxing.
You would like to see your ego then.
Well, do you have a will?
I don't know if I do or not. That's the
No,
problem.
you haven't got one. There's only one will.
I don't know. I mean, I'm not trying to joke about it.
Oh, no, I know that. I know that.
Because if you got a fellow that's in a student, say, who is, in the habit of doing things because of his will, everybody says, well, it doesn't make a difference what you want to do, you go ahead and do it anyway. He takes that literally and just goes ahead and does it.
Let me quote you a simple one. It is the will of the Father to give you the kingdom.
When he wants to.
Huh?
When he wants to, right?
No, Jesus said, it is the will of the Father to give you the kingdom.
Yes, I know that, but that doesn't say when he'll give it to you, though.
Anytime you want to receive it.
Well,
You see what I mean?
there's more to that than that, though, otherwise.
Well, no, it's that simple.
Well, yeah, otherwise you wouldn't need a teacher, would you?
Yes, you need a teacher.
Why do you need a teacher?
Because you couldn't get to that consciousned without it.
That's what I'm talking about.
You couldn't get to that simplicity without it until you have received, until you have had the door opened, until you have had the light. Because it would you couldn't understand that simple statement.
That's what I mean. I mean, I can see the logic in that statement, but I couldn't really fully do it myself. Or anywhere near. So that's not. Well.
When you take some money down to if I took some money down and put it in the bank, and I handed you the bank book and I said, well, here, Williamson, you got $5,000 in the bank, and here's the checkbook, and here's the passbook. Well, go ahead, have fun. Would you have any fun with it? You'd have to draw out the money, wouldn't you, first?
Well, yeah. Get credit from it.
The Father wishes to give you the kingdom.
So So all you have to do is accept it, but in order to get to that point, you have to get brought to that point.
You have to get out of the way.
Well, I know I can get tangled up in this, but the thing is that that doesn't get me any closer to the solution, does it? I mean, I can't really understand exactly what you're saying to me.
Well, I say that, I say one thing, that there is but one mind.
But I mean, the only answer to a fellow who was in that spot where he didn't know was to go against it one way and find out.
Well, why not just go right along and get what he wants?
Well,
You know what I'm saying?
yeah, but I mean, you put it pretty strongly before.
That's true, it is strong.
Well, it's strong enough to want to be sure that you're not in that position, but you are, and know what to do about it and get out of it. Or what to accept, or whatever it takes.
You see, you can't.
Unless it's a gift, in which case it doesn't make any difference what I do, really, personally.
The Father has given you the kingdom. He said so.
Yeah,
Even when he ordained you.
It's
He
a
said
question
so.
of whether I accept it.
It's a question of whether you actually act on it or not.
The acceptance is already complete.
There's something missing there. I just don't see it.
Well, all right. I tell you what I'll do. I'll gather together some of the things of the past that it's in the teacher's handbook, by the way.
If everybody accepted it right there, there would be any problem, would there?
No.
Well, apparently some don't then.
Well, because they've got to do it. See, there's a resentment of the solar authority.
Well, it must be built in somewhere then, because
Well, this is the age-old problem that man has always had, since for thousands of years. The people that make all kinds of money and everything else, and they don't have any problem with it because they know they got it. They got the sort of consciousness and let it go. And you have it. The same way with the master. He's here. What am I going to do about it?
I don't know.
Whether I like him or whether I don't. It makes no difference. If I'm wise, why I'm going to become fully conscious of him and let him permeate my being, because he's Lord of this shindig right here.
Well, that'd be up to him about that.
No, it's up to
I
you.
mean, it'd be up to him when.
No, it's up to you.
Well, I don't see that part.
It's all turning on that look.
You can't, if you were a fish in a goldfish bowl where there's lots of water, you'd have to breathe through your gills. You wouldn't be breathing through your nose, would you? A fish does have a
I don't
nose.
know how to breathe through my nose.
That's right. That's the state you want to get in. Exactly.
How do you get there?
How do you? Do it.
Well, I guess everybody else in the room must be in that state except me then.
No, I don't think so. I can look around and see quite a number of
No,
that.
I'm just using that law for their case.
Well, no, don't need to. Don't need to. It isn't for one person, it's for every number. Yes, sir.
I can understand where we didn't have no will. Yet it is plain to imply that the acceptance or rejection of the kingdom implies a choice.
It's there. It's already given.
But isn't it our choice to accept or reject?
Oh, yes. You can reject it if you want it, but you're still in it.
Oh, that's how we are. I agree with that.
But you can use the will of God if you want to. The will of God, not yours.
Then we do have a choice to use it or not.
You can use the will of God, but you can't use your own will because you don't have it.
Oh, I realize that. That's saying we
And
have.
that's the difference between the two.
We do have our choice, though.
Yeah, we can do it right or wrong, one or the other.
That's your choice right there.
What's that?
You still have to do it sometime or other.
That's right. Yes. Yeah. Yes.
Now, if you want it, you can't have it, right? As long as you say, as long as you keep talking to yourself, saying, but I accept it, then you don't, right?
As far as the consciousness of the master is concerned, There's an old one of the easiest things that I know of, the easiest terminology I know, is out of an old revival hymn. Now I have a whole. Well, the teacher's handbook has got a whole category of explanation about the will. This is one of the things you have to experience. There used to be an old revival song, and it was, "Here I am, O Lord, without one plea." And you went up to manifest this by going up to the altar, you see. But this was the song that they sang. "Here I am, without one plea." In other words, here I am. No matter what condition I am, or what I was, or what I'm going to be, or anything else, I'm here. I'm offering myself. Take it. Do what you want with it.
But if you offer yourself, then you will take it, because by offering yourself, you're realizing that you're not worth it. So then you're not accepted.
That's the starting point, though.
That's what you said.
Yes, right. But the moment the offer is given, he has already made the offer. He has already made the offer. This is one of the things of the crucifixion in the atonement. This has already been done, but you've been refusing it right along. You have been refusing it right along. But when you open yourself up and give up, and that's all there is to it, it's there already. All right, we'll go into it. Yes. Yes.
Well, it seems like there was one little bit of even unconscious resistance to it. You say you didn't get the results, of course, because you hadn't really offered yourself. So I don't know. Well, how can you ever offer yourself?
Well, the Master said it in a different way. He said, "Pray without ceasing." Prayer without ceasing. This is the unconscious part. If you work with the self, and you work with it long enough, it'll function. It'll function right along. There won't be any question in your mind whether you're going to give the right answer or not. But when you separate the self from you, then you have to look to the self for an answer.
Well, you have to see it.
Yeah. But when you don't, when you know that that's all there is of you, and that's the only place an answer can really come from, and you become fully conscious of it, and you're not going to try to give any intellectual answers, and then it comes naturally. And the brain becomes the instrument of the self.
I know I think I have.
Yeah. Well, this is the same thing with the Master.
I'll see how it works.
Well, how could you have the right answer to anything if it didn't always work?
How could I have the right answer?
Yeah.
Well, the only time I have the right answer is working.
Well, it's working all the time.
I mean, let's say before I had the doors open for me, if I had a right answer, it would be the self that got it for me. Somehow I just leak through my resistance. That's the only way I get a right answer. Right? Unless I got it from somebody else.
You might have picked it up from somebody else. But you see, all of these things are on the same basis. It's when you totally let go, then you totally are. And you are not totally there unless you totally let go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
In relation to what you said then, when a being begins taking on the life, he can, whether he has problems or not, just taking on the life, just taking on the of life is the acceptance.
Well, that's acceptance of Christ, the firstborn Son of the Father, yes. In the three aspects.
Right, and this is also the starting point for the, for the beginning of consciousness of the Master, too. Is that correct?
Because Jesus was a Christian being. You take on the Messianic consciousness.
So once this starts, then you are, whether you totally accept what is happening, you are in accordance with the will of the Father, because you are in the series pattern.
That's right, that's your saying. Just how much you'll operate that way is according to how much you try to do it. All right. You look out of yourself there, fellow. It is probably the simplest and yet most complicated the human organism that can have. Because you see, if you don't start with the self, you can't understand it. The animal will never understand it. Because the animal, unless he's trained, is going to try to do it. You see? Until you get the beast trained and under control, why the self doesn't express properly. So when the beast tries to will it, see, then you have problems. Yes.
This is why you said the other night that actually when we read something, I forgot what it was. And then you said if it had been accepted, everybody in the room that hadn't gone through your basic needs was going through right then. Okay.
What happens is, when lots of times when we have prayers downstairs, and we get the presence of the Christ there, it's totally permeating. Everybody that comes to the prayer service, as a rule, comes there with some idea that they're going to worship something or other. So when they come there with the idea that they're going to worship something or other, and the Christ force permeates this chamber, they have a certain degree of acceptance in the fact that they are there with the idea of worship of something. And then when the reality or the voice speaks with the authority of the Christ in it, and they begin to feel the energy and power moving. This is a physical experience, and for the moment the emotions are raised enough that the heart section of the individual produces feeling. And when there's feeling enough, why, at that moment they are their own willfulness and their own determination to do things themselves and all the other are forgotten about for a moment or two. And it's right then when we catch them. We get them off base. Or we lay our hands on and let enough power through that they're not thinking for a few minutes, and it seeps through and gets started. Well, actually what you're doing is drawing enough power through that the light from within the individual begins to show itself too, along with what's going in. And they catch a flash or two of it. There's enough conviction to break down some of the barriers, and then they start toward illumination. But you got to get them off guard. Yeah. I'd rather not right at the moment, because it's quite a subject, feeling is, because there's quite a difference between emotions and feelings. One is the heart and the other is the belly. But this is the reality of our Jesus, our Master, and this is why we're drawing on this tonight, because this is some of the things that keep man from realizing this. Let me give you one little more thing here. Jesus the Christ is an entire different character from that offered to the public as the former Christian religion. The Bible, as the foundation book of Christianity and the Christian religion, makes Jesus half human and half divine. A great deal of time and space is utilized to show that Jesus is human in many ways, especially in character and nature, that he was a human of human parentage, even at a definite family tree, without explaining why this was adopted or why it was a good plan. I call attention to it as responsible for much of the misunderstanding and misconception of Christian mysticism on the part of the thinking men and women. In the early days, the Jews wanted to claim Jesus as their own, a descendant of a certain great Jew, Moses. For this reason, his biography is presented in the Christian Bible in several forms, because it was so emphasized in the early Jewish writings and records to the mystics. Jesus, as the Christ, was almost an invisible master, and his human side wholly and completely eliminated from the consideration. Among advanced, such as the brothers and the mystics and the occultists, he has always been considered as almost totally an invisible being, the master and the greatest, the one who revealed the greatest amount of the secret facts taught. Jesus as Savior and leader, and one of God's divinely created beings, was anticipated by the mystics in Egypt, Persia, India, and other lands. Neither his birth nor his youth surprised them, and they gave little thought to his origin and to his human side of his existence.